Raylan still has that inquisitive mind, that chip on his shoulder 15 years after the pre-time jump events of the Justified season finale The Promise, and he still won't allow himself to be bullied or pushed around, at least not by criminals. But what about his 15-year-old daughter Willa, played by Oliphant's own daughter Vivian, or perhaps Carolyn Wilder, an attorney, or Alvin Guy, a judge? By the end of the series opener, City Primeval, their tense adversarial relationships with Raylan had laid the groundwork for some of the storylines that this show will follow. Both viewers of the first season of Justified and book readers of Elmore Leonard's works will be aware that City Primeval is a whole new setting for Timothy Oliphant's Raylan. The co-creators of the miniseries, Dave Andron and Michael Dinner, the former was an executive producer on the original, and the latter was an executive producer and director on the original, give Raylan a different sandbox to play in by moving him to Detroit. Raylan is now decades into his career as a U.S. Marshal and far away from his hometown of Harlan, Kentucky. The characters from the first season of Justified, whose series-long arcs were just as significant as Raylan's, are no longer around as ghosts from his past. Boyd Crowder, played by Walton Goggins, is probably still behind bars, and Ava Crowder, played by Joel Carter, is probably still hiding out with Boyd's son. Also left out of the conversation are Raylan's colleagues marshals from that office, Rachel Brooks and Tim Gutterson. Let's go back to the beginning of this. City Primeval begins with Raylan dropping off Willa, his daughter, with ex-wife Winona at a facility for what Willa refers to as conversion therapy. After the conclusion of Justified, Raylan moved to Miami to be closer to them. She appears to butt heads frequently with Winona, who is away on vacation with someone Willa refers to as the Stash, and has her father's shrugging attitude towards violence in addition to her overall disaffected teen emotions. She is also in problems at school for striking another girl. Willa is meant to be straightened out in this location close to the Everglades, yet this talk has a typical tone that suggests Willa is frequently difficult. The younger Oliphant's performance in this isn't fully convincing, but she and her father seem to get along well. Raylan is asked by Willa, "Why can't I just stay with you?" by a daughter who obviously wants to spend more time with her father. Raylan is spared from addressing the question when a pickup truck driven by two convicts collides with the couple's automobile. Could they have chosen a worse target for their carjacking attempt? They were unable. When they threaten Willa, Raylan pulls a shotgun on them, finds out they're wanted in Detroit, and then drags them there while carrying Willa because he missed her severely mandated drop-off time at camp. When Raylan says, "If you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours," in this episode, he is maintaining a tradition of decorum and courtesy towards villains. He says, "You have my word," and I believe him. He has a moral code that isn't always in line with the law, but he also expects offenders to show remorse and compliance, which they frequently don't want to do. As a result, Raylan does what he does best and stuffs the two would-be kidnappers and carjackers in the trunk. He exposes them to the sun. He travels slowly towards Detroit. Additionally, when Raylan appears in front of Judge Guy, his defense attorney Carolyn doesn't let him off the hook. This scene features some good editing, as Carolyn questions Raylan's testimony, and we cut between his and Willa's leisurely road trip and his time testifying. Carolyn lays out Raylan's tough guy shit so blatantly that Judge Guy sides with her, drops the Florida charges against her client, and throws the Givenses in jail. Judge Guy was irritated by Willa's laughter from the audience area and shocked by Raylan's snide comment about how there weren't more attempts on his life. Regarding that attempted assassination, Judge Guy's automobile was blown up the following morning by two racist militiamen who were upset that he had slept with their mother. It's a case that Raylan and the DPD, who he's persuaded to assist at the judge's request, easily solve, and it provides an opportunity to contrast the older, wiser Raylan with his DPD colleagues Norbert, a typical angry cop who is obnoxious, and Maureen, okay but not particularly thorough. The only detective who comes close to resembling a real partner for Raylan is the deliberate, sarcastic detective Wendell, and even though he isn't allowed into Judge Guy's office when the judge tells Norbert, Maureen, and Raylan that after 30 years on the bench, he has access to things you and your bosses don't want to come to light, we can see Wendell paying close attention. What is he aware of, and will he include Raylan? We also meet Clement at this point, who is impulsive, dangerous, and, dare I say it, quite attractive. Clement is referred to as the most dangerous man Raylan has ever faced in the City Primeval marketing materials. The character description reminds me of Holbrook's portrayal of the Corinthian and the Sandman, even though I'm not so sure about the former. How quickly we forget the evilness of Robert Quarles. Clement is cunning enough to have casino waitress Sandy Adelaide Clemens at his beck and call and egotistical enough to sing along to his own demo tape in the car. He serves as our link between numerous storylines. Marcus Sweetie Sweeten, a former singer and pub owner, Vondi Curtis Hall, who has his own history with Carolyn, is someone with whom he has some sort of history. Before going out with Sandy to entice the Albanian high-roller gangster she has been courting, Clement steals a gun from Sweetie's bar. This weapon, coupled with his trigger-happy nature, causes the explosive altercation between Clement, the judge, and the judge's assistant Rose, Red Gray. Clement tries to follow Sandy to the Albanian's home for a burglary, but Guy cuts in between their cars, irking the Clement to the point that a high-speed chase takes place in the streets near the D-Town casino. Of course, Clement is sexist enough to shoot Rose in the face to murder her. And of course, he is racist enough to not understand how Judge Guy could have money without being a drug dealer. The task group led by the U.S. Marshal Service and the DPD is left to try to make sense of what happened as Clement walks away from the killings with no remorse at all and with the brown notebook that Judge Guy had flashed at the DPD. Did they miss something when looking into Judge Guy's vehicle bombing, and was the motivation ultimately not personal? Was Rose, the aide to Judge Guy who it turns out was an informant for Maureen, the intended victim? Norbert tells his colleagues officers in Raylan, who is now staying in Detroit far longer than he had intended. I don't want any suspects out of the file. However, I'm confident that Clement has a respectable police record, and the events of City Primeval will only add to it.